Well, Star Wars Battlefront has arrived, complete with evil stormtroopers, rebel scum, and more lasers than an EDM rave. All the nostalgia you'll experience from the game will probably overpower you if you're a hardcore Star Wars fan, and it'll probably give you multiple nerdgasms too, as it puts you straight into those awesome battles that you'll be familiar with from the original trilogy, from various different planets and locations like Hoth, Endor, Tatooine, and a new volcanic planet called Salust. But unlike most of the games you'll be picking up and playing this holiday season, Star Wars Battlefront has had one of its limbs removed. It's got no real campaign or story and basically puts all of its eggs in that multiplayer basket, meaning you're going to have to be a fan to make any sense of what's actually going on in the game. Being an online multiplayer based game pretty much means that if you have no internet connection, or you've forgotten to pay your Xbox Live or PlayStation Network for the month, then Star Wars Battlefront will be about as useful as a parachute in a submarine. There are single player missions in the game that come in the form of, well, missions, but these really aren't all that extensive, and mainly play out to be a bit of a gap filler for the lack of single player content. Though even these play out like multiplayer matches, just against a bunch of bots instead. There's also a horde-like mode that you and a buddy can jump right into, wiping out waves of enemy that get harder and harder as you go along. It's pretty fun, but there's only really so many times you can hop into it before it starts to feel a bit samey. But of course the main event here is the online competitive multiplayer, pitting both the Rebel Alliance and the Imperials against each other in warlike battles. There's a lot of game modes in Battlefront, some new and interesting modes here that we haven't really seen before like Walker Assault and Drop Zone, and there's also a few that we've seen in practically every other multiplayer game that has guns in. The only difference is, instead of being called Team Deathmatch, Capture the Flag and Domination, they've now got names like Blast, Cargo and Droid Run to fit in with the whole Star Wars mood. And although there's a whole bunch of modes, you'll probably find yourself navigating to the same ones over and over again. Some of the bigger modes support up to 40 players, and these are the ones that will probably draw a bigger crowd. But unfortunately there's only a few maps that actually support these large scale modes, and you'll quickly find that running up that sloping hill on Tatooine for the 20th time gets a bit repetitive. Though one thing I have to say that DICE has directly nailed on the head with extreme precision is just how Star Warsy the game actually is. The game makes you feel like you're in an epic scene from the movies, right down to the tiniest details. The maps might be lacking in quantity and variety, but quality wise they really don't get a whole lot better. Instead of having cut and paste assets randomly dotted around the map like toys in a kid's bedroom, every model, prop and piece of cover is not only carefully placed around the map, making them feel more like a real place and less like a map, but they're also true to the location and lore of Star Wars. Everything from dusty land speeders sat around chilling in the corner of the room, to that weird sound when you're inside a shield hit by blasters, that just sounds amazing for some reason. Not to mention there's even battles going on in the sky between Rebel and Imperial ships, drawing you even further into the action and making you feel like you're in a much bigger war. I mean, the only thing that's really not true to Star Wars is the fact that stormtroopers can be accurate. Though if they wanted to make that even more realistic, I guess they could have always turned aim assist off for stormtroopers. Bit unfair, but at least it'd be true to the movies. Another thing that I'm going to have to give 2 thumbs up to Battlefront for is its graphics. Not only does it look and feel like Star Wars, but the game's visuals are gorgeous, and DICE is really showing off the flashy power of the Frostbite engine in this one. Everything from the rusty scratch marks of an X-Wing panel to the glimmer and sparkle of a frozen snowy trench. Star Wars Battlefront is easily one of the best looking games of the generation so far. I mean, come on, just look at this bloody cave. You can definitely see that a lot more time has been taken into the overall quality and presentation of the maps rather than the quantity of them. So it's the internet's favourite company, EA, that have the game license to make Star Wars games. They've assigned the re-release of Battlefront to DICE, the same guys who made the Battlefield series, who definitely aren't new to the whole multiplayer aspects of game development. Though to anyone thinking that Battlefront is just a reskinned, copy and pasted Battlefield title with a few Stormtrooper helmets and Ewoks thrown into the mix, you'll be dead wrong. Unlike Battlefield, which doesn't really cater for the casual gamers very well with all its extensive loadouts and class systems and all that sort of stuff, Star Wars Battlefront does, and it's about as hardcore as a tin of baked beans. It's a bit like playing laser tag. It's a load of fun, but really casual, and doesn't really rely on a huge amount of skill or tactics to do well. Pointing and shooting your weapon is probably about as complex as it gets, which can be one of the game's biggest drawbacks or attractions, depending on what kind of player you are. The game is so casual in fact that even player ranks can't be seen on the leaderboards at the end of a match, so you'll have no idea whether you've faced off against a complete noob or a Battlefront veteran. Although it's aimed to be a competitive multiplayer game, it doesn't exactly do a fantastic job at addressing the whole competitive side of things. Let's put it this way, there's about as much chance of Chewbacca getting a shave than a Star Wars Battlefront MLG tournament taking place anytime soon. Everyone has access to almost unlimited, slightly overpowered gadgets and weapons in the form of star cards that basically simplify all of your customization options into a choice of a few things. Fancy lobbing a grenade at an enemy that explodes on impact, killing them before they have a chance to react? There's a card for that. Want to zap a guy in the face from across the map with a charged up shot before he even knows what's hit him? There's also a card for that too. In fact, there's loads of these cards that basically let you destroy enemies in really fun, if not slightly cheap ways. Though the fact that everyone has access to these cards kinda means that although they can be seen to be a bit too strong sometimes, they are balanced, as everyone has access to them, but they won't have that many until they've ranked up first. There's a bunch of different blasters in the game, but there really isn't anything close to the amount of guns we've seen in other games. And although the gunplay can be fun, it also feels a bit bare bones at times with a lack of customization, variety and personalisation options we've been spoiled with in other shooter franchises. Although I will admit, there's something really satisfying gunning down other players with an iconic blaster, and watching them fall down in a bombardment of sparks and puffs of smoke. Heroes are back from the original Battlefront games, and just like in the last ones, they bring a bit of extra firepower to your matches, using special weapons and abilities. Strangling another player with the Force with Vader makes you feel like an absolute badass, tearing through groups of enemies like they're made of paper. The catch here though is that they're pretty much treated the same as power-ups, instead of well-built characters, which sometimes feel a little bit gimmicky. Although they're fun to play as, you'll first have to be lucky enough to spot one of those hero tokens randomly spinning around on the map, and when one does appear, there's usually a sprint to get to it before all of your teammates do. If you do manage to beat them all in your little mini race, then you'll assume the role of a hero or villain. You'll then respawn and wander around the map, bossing anyone that gets close to you, only to eventually die. Well, crouch down on one knee to show that you've been defeated, because dying would totally be going against movie canon. There's definitely a sense of joy when you manage to become one of the heroes, but I just can't help but think sometimes that they're hardly anything like their movie counterparts. I mean, they look similar, but the kind of awkward lines that they spout out every now and then like a pull-string toy really don't add anything to the character.
This will cut you down.
Although they were meant to sound cool and all, they just do the opposite, and most of the lines sound about as cheesy as a 1980s game show host.
We gotta do this for the princess.
Not to mention that Darth Sidious runs like he's crapped his pants. He reminds me of a violent, senile old man rather than a powerful emperor. This is the same guy that wrecked Mace Windu and even won a fight against Yoda. Think about that. Vehicles are handled in the same way as heroes. They're really simple to use and sort of do most of the work for you with their auto-targeting systems. Sometimes it's fun to have a little fly around in a TIE fighter every now and then, but it normally disconnects you from all the action below. And at the end of the day, you're just buzzing around in a fairly small airspace trying to get kills. The whole experience feels a bit arcadey. Getting the game out just before Christmas is a brilliant tactic to boost sales. And although part of me finds this game to be a polished gem and easily one of the best looking and well presented games of the current generation, I can't help but wonder how much more content could have been put into the game had the development cycle been longer, and it wasn't so rushed out the door to gather a shitload of pre-Christmas sales. As you probably know, EA are also rubbing a sneaky season pass in our faces for Battlefront that offers double the content that's in the game itself. And although getting this will expand the amount of maps, locations, weapons, perks and all of that stuff, it's also going to cost you another wad of dosh. And the fact that there isn't a tremendous amount of content in the base game as it is, kinda feels like a bit of a kick in the nuts, having to spend even more money, just because the content in the base game is getting repetitive. It's not like games are cheap. Battlefront will have you saying things out loud like, I wonder what would happen if I shot this Ewok. Oh my god, a stormtrooper actually hit me. And thank god Jar Jar Binks isn't in this game. But at the end of the day, Star Wars Battlefront has come along and split a lot of its fanbase right down the middle. I definitely think it's a fun and fairly addictive game to play, and it looks sexier than most of the other games you've played this year. It's really simple to pick up and play, without the worry of kill to death ratios, complex leveling and loadout systems, catering more for the core gamer than someone who likes to get all super serious and competitive. Though at the same time it's going to turn away a lot of people with the game feeling slightly too shallow to be fully drawn into it. If you're a hardcore Star Wars fan, an absolute sucker for graphics, or you just like shooters in general, then Battlefront might be worth it. It's got a few flaws, but overall it's an enjoyable experience, if not slightly too casual. Though do be warned, it's not for everyone, and if you're looking for something with a bit more depth, then you might be best looking elsewhere. Anyway guys, that's pretty much it for this one, so make sure you hit that like button if you enjoyed the review, and be sure to subscribe to see plenty more. Thanks for watching, and may the Force be with you.